Have you ever found yourself trying to sharpen a chainsaw and you just can never get it as good as it was out of the box brand new? You're probably feeling pretty frustrated with it at this point, so I'm going to go over a couple of the key things to sharpening a chainsaw and how easy it actually is. Alright, let's get started. So before you even start to sharpen the saw, one thing you need to do is make sure the chain's tight, because if it's loose like this, when you're trying to run the file across the chain, it'll move back and forth, and then that's just kind of frustrating. So we'll get this chain tightened up. Loosen the nuts off a bit. And you kind of want to hold the tip of the bar up a bit, just to take a bit of pressure off it. That just snugs up nice like that. And when you pull up on it, you just see under a couple of the drives, so that's pretty good. If you have a vise, it's going to make sharpening the saw a lot easier. You can do it on the tailgate of your truck or a stump or whatever you have, but it's going to be much easier in a vise. And you want the vise in close to the saw here. So now that the saw's in the vise, you need to find a starting point. And sometimes chains will have a double tooth. So there will be two teeth that'll be facing the same way. And I'm not sure if this chain does. This chain is off of that firewood processor that was in one of my other videos. But I just always go through and look for that double tooth. And if you do find a double tooth, that's a good spot to start. Because you know once you get back around to it, you'll know when to stop. So there's no double tooth on this chain. And if there's not, you can look for the dullest tooth. And then I just like to put a mark on it so I know where I started. But you want to find the dullest tooth because you want to put the same amount of strokes on every tooth so they all wear evenly. So if you can find the one that's the dullest, and that's this guy here, you can start with that, end up putting 6 or 7 strokes on it, and then do that on the rest of the teeth. So now that you've got a starting point, you need to find the right file. And a good spot to find that is on the box that the chain came in. So this calls for 13/64 file. If you don't have the box, you can, I'm sure, go online and find all this info, or at the saw shop, they'd be able to tell you too. So when you're filing the saw, this is the part of the chain that does the cutting, and this tip is rounded off. So when you run the file through, you want to remove enough material to get back behind this rounded off point so there's a nice sharp edge all the way along the face of that tooth. So as you're pushing the file through the tooth, you've got to hold the file on the right angle. You don't want it too sharp and you don't want it too flat. The spec is 30 degrees, and on most chains there's a little line right there. I don't know if you can see it, but you can just kind of use that as a reference to follow along. On the back of the box, it gives you all the different specs too. Like, yeah, there's the angle for that's the distance for the raker, the angle for the tooth, the angle to hold the file. So that's a pretty good resource right there. So now that the tooth is sharp, you have to pay attention to the raker, or the depth gauge, which is this little part here. And the height of this determines how much the tooth is going to cut. So the lower this is, the more that's going to grab. And you want it a certain distance. And you can use one of these fancy little raker gauges. And it just sits on the top of the chain like that. And this step down distance here determines that. And then you just run the flat file across there, and that'll take that raker down to the right depth. You don't want it too low because it'll grab too much, and then that's kind of dangerous. It'll rip the saw right out of your hands pretty well. And if you don't file that, the tooth can be as sharp as it can be, but if this is too high, it won't allow the tooth to grab anything. So that's important you have those filed properly. So there, that took a little bit off, but that's good. On to the next one. So there you can just see that little bit of gap. So when the chain's cutting through the wood, that rides on the wood, and then the distance that tooth sticks up, that's how much it'll cut off. If the flat file and the round file seem like that's a little too much coordination, or seems a little bit overwhelming, you can get these type of files, and this one's right from Still, and it has a flat file and a round file built into it. There's a round file on both sides, so you can use it on both sides of the chain, and the distance that flat file sits down below that round file, that just automatically sets that for you. So as you file, it does the tooth and the raker at the same time. And I've never tried one of these, but I wanted to, so we'll give this a shot. Yeah, so it just sits on there like that. This rail and this rail ride on the teeth, and then the round file's down sitting in the tooth, and then the flat file is sitting on top of the raker. So and there you have it, a perfectly sharp tooth, and the raker's set right to the right height, all in one step. Is that thing ever sweet? That is so easy. We'll get the rest of this chain done. Alright, so I'm on to the other side now. I got the saw spun around in the vise. There's that tooth I colored black. So I'll start right here. That's all there is to it. Okay, I don't know how well you'll be able to tell, but this tooth is filed too much on an angle like that. That's how the file sits in the tooth, but that's the angle it needs to be on. And this tool just makes it so easy. You just line up these marks, and the handles are already on the right angle, so there. A lot of the angles on this side are off. These chains are all off that processor, and I think he was trying to sharpen them while they were on the machine, and they are not in a handy spot to get at, so I just stuck them on this bar on this saw. It's a lot easier. A bad habit you want to avoid when you're filing too is back dragging the file. So when you sharpen, you push the file through, but you don't want to do that. You want to lift the file up a bit. And I see lots of people do it. They'll kind of back drag the file. You don't want to do that. Just push like that and then lift it up a bit. And there, back to the black tooth. That chain's all ready to rock. So those are some of the basic points to keep in mind when you're filing a chainsaw. It's not really that hard. I would definitely recommend getting one of those file, I don't know, whatever they're called. One of these. I'll find a link for them, but that just takes all the guesswork out of filing. That is just so slick. Anyways though, if you have any questions or if you think I missed anything, let me know and I will try and answer to the best of my ability. But anyways, thanks for watching.